Thank you for joining me today. I'm Madeline Blair, and this is Unlocked, a show all about turbocharging the resilient leader in you. I have a very special guest today who will be talking with me about all that goes into our decisions, even from places we might have forgotten. And after our conversation, I'll be offering you grounds for thought, sparked by an event in my own life that led to increased understanding. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Unlocked. I'm your host, Madeline Blair, and today we're talking about when trauma gets in the way. Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose our response. When I read that in relation to my own research, I realized that resilience is a decision. You know, we're hit with something unexpected and we must decide what we will do to move us on. My work focuses on preparing my clients to be ready for that decision, whether it is by building their confidence or have a strong support system or by building a learning approach so that they're better informed when the choice of options presents itself. It's easy to think that we are always able to see and choose among options and to do that rationally. There is a remarkable quality about us humans. We really can't make a decision without emotion. It's always there. That emotion may come from the event, or it may come from the environment, or it may come from our past. My guest today is going to talk about how events in our lives, regardless of when, enter into our decision-making and better understand that is helpful to making better decisions. Dr. Lin Morel is a noted expert in spiritual psychology and stress reduction, having garnered more than 40 years of experience in helping individuals cope with emotional trauma, domestic violence, and grief. She founded the Beyond Words Group, Inc. in 2004 and currently serves as the organization's chief executive officer, through which she has aided millions of lives in overcoming traumatic challenges. Through her organization, she developed the WIN, the Willingness, Intention, Neutrality Protocol, the WIN protocol, to further help individuals and has specialized in helping renowned leaders, thought leaders, share their messages and gifts to positively influence society. She's spent nearly 20 years volunteering for survivors of domestic violence and served as a board member or president of several nonprofit organizations and charities. Lin, welcome to Unlocked.
It is a pleasure to be here today.
Oh, likewise. You know, before we get into things, I have to also tell everybody, you're a 5th degree black belt, a national karate champion, and a gold medalist in martial arts, such as Qigong, Tai Chi, and I Dao Kung Fu. A public speaker, a consultant, a best-selling author, and non-denominational minister. Now, give me a break, Lin.
I actually am amused at how much life I've packed in and how trauma has actually given me the capability to even be sitting here with you today. It's quite remarkable. In my journey, there was a lot of violence and mental illness as a child, and I grew up as a bookworm. I read my first full book before I was in 1st grade, called Pocahontas. And my aunt and uncle said if I could read the book, I could go to Maine. So my love of books taught me about morality. Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, Cherry Ames, all the kid books. I would climb on the roof and be by myself or a tree, and I'd read and read and read. And at one point with Nancy Drew, I decided I wanted to be a detective. And little did I know that my detecting would be understanding the space between stimulus and response.
Oh, I love it.
Viktor Frankl was my hero when I read that because he survived with his humanity intact.
Yes.
And a lot of trauma victims don't. We're not taught resiliency, many of us as children. Some of us just have to survive.
Yeah.
And that survival, we get locked into whatever age the trauma happened. So for me, mine happened at a very young age, before I could speak, about 6 months old, and even in the womb. So the books gave me a place to be somebody.
Yeah.
And I ran away from home at 17. I was forced to do judo to be a chaperone for my sister. I was chubby. I was shy. I was bullied. Oh boy, did that change with the. And I had absolutely zero self-esteem. And what's that?
Wow.
But I had a mentor. I think sooner or later, if we're on the path of resiliency and overcoming those things that hold us back, usually an angel drops into our life. And this is my judo teacher and his 6 dogs. I was with my mom in a sanitarium. She'd throw things at me. The nurses would restrain her, and I'd drive down the street to the judo studio, go into his sunroom, excuse me, and his 3 standard breads and Doberman pinchers would just jump on the daybed and lick me. And cry, and it was dog therapy. He was a stabilizing influence for me.
Wow. Well, you're already beginning the conversation in terms of, I'm thinking of the questions that I want to pose to you, but I do want to form one of them, because this one was created by a teenager, because I like to ask teenagers to suggest questions, because it gives a different perspective. So this is their question. How do you intertwine psychology, philosophy, and spirituality? What are the connections between these fields?
What a great question. I'll start with, excuse me, with everything, which is I don't know. Find out the intersection is to be curious. If you're interested in spirituality, you don't have to share it with your friends. They'll probably laugh at you. If you're interested in science, whatever it is that your interest is, that's your being calling you into your future. And it's a rite of passage. I can remember running away at 17, and I worked my way through college. I did grad school from the time I was a junior undergraduate. I was driven to find something other than the doggies licking me and judo, be a purpose. And I have to say, I'm in my 70s and I still play with what is my purpose as a spiritual human being? What is my purpose as a spiritual scientist? I'm actually the first graduate ever in that particular doctorate.
Wow.
Spiritual science, where spirit meets science. I uncovered the essences of various traumas. And in every case, with the 40 years I've worked with victims of trauma, that there is always a way out of the trauma to get answers to those teenagers' questions. And I had those very same questions. So I turned to books. I turned to becoming a really good student. Running away, I worked as a nurse's aide. What am I doing here? They treat these people horribly. And I saw things that a lot of kids wouldn't see. Kids, meaning teenagers. I guess I can say that because I'm many decades beyond that. But in the serendipity of me being forced to be a chaperone for my younger sister, my entire life curriculum began to unfold.
Mm.
And what I would say to the teenagers is that you have a lot more wisdom than adults give you credit for. There's my favorite, I'm a science nerd. One of my favorite studies was when NASA in 1965 took roughly 1,500 children in the START, whatever that program is.
Head Start, I think.
And at that time, between 3 and 5, 99 point something percent were geniuses. They tracked those people. This was because they wanted to find out how to get NASA astronauts. When they were 10, only 64%, give or take, were still at the genius level. When they were 15, it dropped to 30 something percent. And as adults, only 2% of those genius kids are geniuses. That is the state of much of our society. What I would say to the teenagers among this class who are obviously wise beyond their years is find your way.
Mm-hmm.
Find the thing that resonates, that clunk. For me, I got dragged to judo lessons, but I was like a clunk from day one. 3 months later, my parents stopped paying for it because my sister quit. I begged, borrowed, and stole rides to class. I washed floors. I did ironing because, by God, I was going to keep going. I was teaching grown men. Can you imagine a bullied young lady teaching throwing their on the ground? And we all have our defining moments. So just now for a second, for all the listeners, what is something that you can hold on to that makes you you? You can write it down if you want, because that is your essence. No matter how trauma shapes us, and there's no such thing as no trauma. There's trauma from the womb to the day you die.
Mm-hmm.
Our humanity, and we're in the spirituality vein, we are charged with learning how to love when sometimes it doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah.
And I learned that through an incredible human being that I actually dreamt about. My second husband died in a plane crash. I was devastated and I couldn't think and I was sick and yada, yada, yada. And I had these 2 dreams back to back. It turned out I met both the people in my dreams and lifted me from grieving a widow to I have a purpose.
Wow.
My case was to go to graduate school and get a degree in what was called applied spirituality. And so I learned how to counsel people by listening.
Yeah.
So many adults don't listen to teenagers. Many teenagers don't listen to adults. And most of us tune everything out. Where the lights are on and we're present, not very many.
Yeah. Well, what this leads me to is how do you work with people? I mean, can you tell us some of your experiences?
Sure.
And also I'm curious what you have learned yourself through this process, but I really want to know, how is it that you work with people?
How I work with people is from a place of a clean slate. Can't afford to judge or identify anybody because there's no 2 people alike and no 2 processes alike. I call it win because when we get curious and we start to notice that, oh, I break up every 3rd month when I'm dating somebody, or dad gets drunk and beats up mom, what do I do about it? So from what am I going to wear to prom? There's no question or issue too small or unworthy. So when I sit with people, my only job is to love them. That may sound corny. That's what I Dao Kung Fu means, the love way mastery. So after recognizing that being a victim and crying about all the terrible things that happened to me, I could live in victimdom, or I could take the experience that I lived through and transform it from trash to treasure. One person's victimization, when they change their mind or get curious, some of the most powerful people that I work with, that are changing millions of lives, have had traumas. Some as young as birth, some at 9 years old when a parent died, or there was a divorce, or alcoholism, or drug abuse, whatever that is, it all gets stored in our happy little amygdala back here that keeps track of every negative thing. We as human beings, and I say human, although it's including women, Hugh is a sense of God. So we're God men and God woman. To me, God is the generator of dimensions. G period, O period, D period. Whatever drives, breathes us is more than we are capable of understanding with our mind. What I would say to the people in their teens and early 20s is be kind to yourself. And if you can't find love in a situation, make it up and put it there yourself. And this is a training so that you learn to see everything through the eyes of loving. And it's not easy. It is doable, and it's a lifelong practice that martial arts gave me. Be neutral. And I share the story, and people say this is an inappropriate story, but it's a true story. I finished my doctoral dissertation, which had to do with victimization. Hallelujah, 5 years of work. I stuck my camera in my pocket. I walked to Trader Joe's to buy myself some bananas because I liked bananas back then. On the way home, in broad daylight, in Culver City, a nice place, two people are walking toward me, and every hair on my body, my head even, started to get prickles. I stepped off the driveway. I looked down, and as I looked down, the woman that passed me said hello. And I said, hello. And she goes, turn around, bitch. And so there were two perpetrators. Now, because I had at this point 20, 30 years of martial arts, my first thought was, God, is it real? Is it loaded? Do I take them on? Loaded, real, don't mess. My inner screamer. And they took my purse with my wedding pictures in it. I started to chase them down the alley. I threw my bag of bananas at them. What a futile gesture. And I stopped. And I said, give me the words, like internally.
Mm-hmm.
Out of my mouth comes, and God bless you both. I know you need help. And it was genuine. I went to a place where they finally let me dial 911. Cops were coming, seeing suspicious people running down the alley. Turns out there were two loaded guns, four perpetrators, and there had been a gang murder of a lady 2 weeks earlier. Every time a detective looked for me, most people totally traumatized. I'm at this point, not much bothers me. Where's the victim? I'm thinking I'm not a victim. I was the only one in street clothes. And then they finally moved me closer to the scene of the crime. Helicopter, SWAT, canine. I was a celebrity. Good detention, isn't it? This is not about a purse snatching. So in the end, the detective takes me up, takes the woman out of the car. I look at her, I turn and walk away. Can you identify her? Not 100%. I would not say that was her. It looks like her. The woman was wearing a navy blue sweatsuit, but this lady was taller, and she's dirty. And the cop laughed. You're always taller with a gun at your head. And we found peace. And so he said to me, as puts her back in the car, with the three of the four were caught. And the detective says to me, did you really say God bless you? I said, I did. He goes, you crazy lady. I said, why? They all confessed. They couldn't get God bless you out of their head. And that's what I named my practice, Idel Kung Fu. I went to the police station to get my purse the next day. The desk sergeant goes, you the lady at Bagley in Maine? Mm-hmm. Did you really say God bless you? Uh-huh. He goes, you're crazy. Goes to the back. All the cops in the back of the station are standing behind the front desk. This is the crazy lady that said, God bless you. I said, but it worked, didn't it? So when we embody love, we're loved beings. We are loving beings. And trauma, disrespect, alcohol, drugs, mental illness, our parents, how can I put it? They're the things that temper us, good, bad, or ugly. We form opinions about life, about our worth, about our lack of worth. We're too fat, we're too skinny, we're too this, we're too that. By the time we're teenagers, we've got all this stuff inside our head. So, what I would say is be kind to yourself. Life is a process. And the kinder you can be, and when you ever get that, oh, I'm such a stupid, you know what, just go, stop it. You know, the comedian, I forget his name, Benny, whatever. and he played a psychiatrist and he charged $5 an hour for a session. And when you come in, he goes, if you leave early, you forfeit your $5. And so this woman says, well, this is what happened to me and it's terrible. And he goes, stop it. Stops it. And she starts talking. He goes, stop it. So the whole hour, this said, stop it. So what I have taken from that is when those, I call them barking dogs. Anybody, virtually raise your hand if you have a commenter on your life. You should have done better. You didn't do this. He doesn't love me. I did something wrong. All that mishigosh I call barking dogs. And what it does is it keeps us small. And yet within us is a sleeping genius waiting to be unleashed. And what's the denominator? When we learn to accept and love ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
That's the naysayers in our head. That is the beginning of freedom.
You know, that's one of the first things I work with my clients is to help them to get to know who they are from their own stories. And you know, it can be a story from 5 minutes ago or from when they were 5. It doesn't matter. I said, just keep discovering who you are. And it's amazing. I think you're right. The better they recognize who they are, in a way, they begin to learn what you've just been talking about, acceptance.
Yep.
And acceptance, of course, is the part of love, is acceptance. And so they begin to love themselves more. And you know, research shows that when you know yourself better, you have more confidence, more competence, you're more creative, you're even more resilient. So it's all tied together.
Yes, and you have more fun.
Oh, yes. That I agree with.
Right here, right now, getting online today. For some reason, Google came in and wiped all my passwords and I couldn't get in my computer. And, and so we had a giggle about it. And rather than freak out, it's like, wow, isn't this fascinating?
Yes. Yeah.
So when stuff happens, my default is, isn't this fascinating?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how can I handle myself under pressure? Well, wisdom will give you the ability because you learn what fights to pick and when to walk away. And when we're young, it's trial and error. And God bless our parents, we get their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever our mother does in the womb, we kind of learn. It's called hot responder, where your hair trigger, and a cool responder. It's physiological. And the little effector receptors that hook up in our cells, if it's trauma in the womb, we go out ready to fight.
Mm.
Never met anybody who was completely loved except possibly my granddaughter. Because older, they waited a lot of years. This kid is four months old and can say hello. And when she looks at you, you're being seen by a sentient being. That's the exception, I think, rather than the rule. Because adults grow up and it's good enough for me, it's good enough for you. Well, my father beat me, so I'm going to beat you. And that's how we bring forward the next generation of trauma. Nobody's exempt.
Mm-hmm.
But we can choose to use it for us.
Yeah.
And we're all geniuses when we're little. Why not reclaim your genius self while you're a teenager?
You know, I so agree that life is, and I won't say it's just all trauma because it isn't, but there's always suffering in life. It's part of it, life. But I think there are times when we don't recognize what trauma we're carrying. How does a person, I mean, what does it look like when you have an unrecognized trauma in your life? How does a person begin to apprehend that so that they can take some action?
Right. Well, the first step is the W is the willingness to be curious about what triggers you.
Mm.
Me, even though I've done oodles of decades of trauma work, loud noises like fireworks trigger me. I get triggered when um, there's really, really rude drivers.
Mm.
And I used to get really upset when they cut me off. Now I go, God bless you. You know, and so I'm at peace. And when I bless them, I offer them an energetic ripple from my heart to their heart. And frequently, when I work with traumatized people, or they don't even know that they have trauma, they just say they've lost their third business in a row. They make $5 million and lose it. They make $20 million and it gets embezzled. We have issues that repeat themselves. So the traumas could be something as not being able to sleep at night. A trauma could be manifest when you're, say, 20 years old and still wake up in the morning with your thumb in your mouth. That's a trauma indicator. If you start eating a lot and you haven't, you're packing on something to protect you. If you get sick a lot, like for example, 40 years ago, I worked with a young lady, and every time she started the new school year, she would be sick in bed. And when we unpacked it, she was in college and always missed every class the first half of the semester. We tracked it down to she was 6 years old, just started school. Her best friend next door. She goes outside to get to the school bus, and the best friend is in the back of the station wagon waving goodbye. And that's the last time she saw her best friend. Every time when the school year started, right through grammar school and high school, she gets sick. So all we needed to do was to identify her grief of losing her very best friend. Now, that's a young age to lose your best. I had a husband die in a plane crash. That was really rough. It activated all of my stuff. Here I am, abandoned again. First husband mirrored my mother and father. At the point I got pregnant, he became massively violent and bipolar. And so, thank God I was a martial artist. He choked me, could have killed me. The bad news was he was my teacher. The good news was that I was his best student. And that ended. I had a skill to protect myself. Now, teenagers may not have physical things like karate, but I can show you a couple things that would help you de-stress yourself, and nobody ever has to know. In Chinese, they call it shake the hands to get the fleas off. So if you got styrofoam on your hand and you had a bad day or you got a deer, your boyfriend, shake the fleas off. And energetically, it cleans the negativity. It's like erasing a chalkboard. And I tell you, I do it frequently after I'm done with people, like the man that was contemplating end of life stuff. And when I was done on the way home from my walk, I was doing a little finger shaking. So that's something you can go in the bathroom at school, in between studying for an exam, just move them around. It's so simple, and it's a 5,000-year-old practice.
What is so remarkable is how something that is invisible has been given physicality through this motion, and
Mhm.
and the body responds to that because you're mentally you're saying that's what this does.
Mhm. Also, physically, you'll feel lighter. Yesterday I work for a company. I take care of all their people in the work I do. And I got a text last night. So and so woke up unresponsive. Her husband couldn't wake her up this morning.
Mm.
So my first thought was that she passed away. She's young. She's so incredible. Kids and everything. And we don't know. She's still in ICU. And I felt myself getting really upset because I've lost like 4 or 5 people in the last few months that I really are near and dear to me. So what did I do? Oh, I took a walk. And while I was walking, of course, I don't care if people look at me walking down the road. And by the time I walked the whole backwoods with the water, I talked to the client, who, thank God I called him because he was going to move to Oregon to get a kill shot. And I gave him purpose. We all have a purpose. And if we have lousy parents by our discernment, they probably are, forgive me for saying that. They're doing the best they know how with what they bring to the relationship. But we are sovereign human beings. We have incredible hearts, minds, consciousness. And those little genius kids that lose it, I would say to every teenager, when you get curious about what makes you tick, when you get curious about what upsets you, when you get curious about the fact that you wake up with a really stiff neck in the morning. Wow, what's that about? I went to bed feeling okay. Oh, I had a really bad dream.
Ah,
Or you
yeah,
fail a physics test. Whoops, back to the drawing board. You
yeah.
don't blame yourself. This is a learning planet. We're here to make mistakes. And having spent 25 years near Hollywood, mistake. It's a mistake. Take one, take two, take three. But 25 times, so what? You're in a learning planet. When I started to play the piano, it was terrible. When I married my first husband, he made fun of my piano playing. Do you know why? He was jealous. And I have a 5 octave, well, before my vocal cords, but I had a 5 octave perfect pitch.
Wow.
Have that anymore. I still sing at the top of my lungs in the bathtub or when I'm taking a walk in the woods. So we learn to adjust. So what I would say to the teenage listeners is you have everything you need and it's right here.
Mm.
You'll hear things from the world, the news, teenagers are terrible, bull malarkey. When I worked at the Domestic Violence Center, we use art as a healing tool. The artwork that these young people did to heal themselves, phenomenal. And
Now, I want to pause for a minute. I love the fact, by the way, that you're relating this to teenagers. I have a real sensitive heart to that because I coach a lot of teenagers. Um, but I want to shift this a little to expand it, maybe just expand.
sure.
In the workplace, we still have the entrance of new trauma. And I'm thinking of bullying. You know, bullies are so hard to deal with. I wonder if you would talk about that and how a person can prepare themselves for that and shake it off. How can they deal with it?
Oh, I've worked a lot in corporate America with entrepreneurs, with everything from Fortune 500 to mom and pops. There are almost always bullies in our life. Now, bullies have themselves been bullied. That doesn't clear anything because you're the one being bullied. But if I could share with you how some of the ways that I overcame bullying. Now, mine was very unique in that I was bullied a lot in high school and picked on, and there was one person in particular would, knock my books on the floor and stomp my pens and be really obscene. But I was in the gym one day teaching the guy I had a crush on, my neighbor, the varsity dude, and he's trying to learn judo out of a book. And I said, Randy, would you like me to show you that? Nobody knew what I did. And I threw him. And then the gym teacher comes over and he goes, throw me. I said, you don't know how to fall. He goes, I'm a Marine. I decked him in front of the entire guys. So that was a serendipity that ended my bullying, right?
Ah,
And actually, I was invited to be the first woman ever to coach the wrestling team for a little 1 day event. So when we find something we're good at, we put our shields up. How do we put our shields up when you're among bullies? Well, bullies have an uncanny way to getting into where your wound is.
yeah, yeah.
Oh my God, they're so good at it. Because if we're a little bit tentative or we have a rough life, there's always a chink in our armor. So even in corporate America, there are bullies. And so, how do you overcome them? I really don't know because it's individual. But what I can say is if you imagine yourself putting on a shield of armor, like remember for those of you that watch Lord of the Rings, when Frodo gets the mithril, whatever that
The
invisible
mithril coat. Yes.
coat, no, nobody could get him. We have to put on an invisible suit of armor. Now, there's a couple ways you can do it. In the Qigong, one of those methods, you imagine you bring a column of light from the highest heavens, doesn't matter what religion, whether you are or you're not. Imagine that light coming through all those places, physical, emotional, mental, unconscious, imagination, all that stuff. We don't have to know about it. It's just there. And it comes all the way through the crown of your head. It goes down, flows into your arms, down your legs, and into the earth. That's called heaven, earth, heaven, human, earth. So you're rooted in your power because we're creatures of the earth. Then I just go, I'll go something like light, 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 which is my signal for, I need a little extra light on this matter, meaning energy to diffuse it. And bullies have always been bullied, almost 100% across the board. So bullied people bully people. And they have a way to get that thing in. So what we have to do, just like shaking it off, we have to put on our suit of armor. And when you're around them, you hear what they say, but you don't take it in. Inside of yourself, you can go delete, 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 delete. And then when they walk away, everybody knows control, delete, delete in a computer. Well, this is ego. This is going to your unconscious. This is going back to your ego and giving it up to God, spirit, whatever you want to call it. So when there's a bully, and like I had a lot of bullies when I was younger, I go in the bathroom, control, alternate, delete, delete that person, delete, 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 delete. I'm going to put love there. And it's an invisible suit of armor. It's a love choice. It's back to Idel Kung Fu. Love overcomes everything, even if it doesn't look like it. Sometimes we need to take actions against bullies. But when the bully's our boss, what the heaven do you do? If you're stuck there and you need the work, you have to do workarounds. And in my case, I worked at Giant Stadium, and I also worked at a petrochemical company, the first woman ever, discriminated against, you name it. But when they found out I knew martial arts and was nationally ranked and fought in Madison Square Garden, all of a sudden my bullies disappeared. And it's just enough that I had that confidence. So
Yeah.
those of you that are teen and corporate and wherever you are, there are bullies in this world. The way I negate them is, first I'll do control, alternate, delete, because they're not in their right mind. First off, they're striking out. So there's a little compassion there. Secondly, I avoid them in all possible ways. And then if they really slime me, I do this, and then I go home and I take a shower. And those that can move on, I think everybody sooner or later has the boss from hell. It's part of being human. And sometimes you quit, other times you get fired. I was a truth teller in a technology company, and I spoke some truth to one of the division, and I was in charge of being the shrink for that division. He didn't like what I said. So he told every single employee if they were as much seen talking to me, they would be fired on the spot. So you know what the guys did? They met me in the basement in the parking lot for me to work with. And I left because I was bringing too much light, love, integrity to that division. So that was a blessing. I had just bought a house. I had a $5,000 a month mortgage. And the day after I closed, I got fired and I couldn't get unemployment. What did I do? And then I got busy and I wrote, I give thanks for seen and unseen benefactors who support my work in the world. And I put it on my wall behind my computer laptop or desktop. And because when we have a mind shift, when we're dealing with bullies, we can actually change the narrative through what we say and specifically what we write. Because our brain takes anything, if we write in the air, on our leg, in a goal book, when we write something down, our brain goes, oh, this is important stuff. So when I get armored, when I would go into some of the corporations that they didn't want a woman there, they ended up liking me because I told them the truth. And I didn't care at that point if I was fired because it was my own business. I found that my suit of armor was to maintain loving. And if I can't find it, idiots, or they're whatever they are, the drunks, I've worked with all of those people in corporations. I just go, God bless you, I love you, peace be still. Because you know why? You put that ripple in the pond, guess who it's coming back to? You. You say, I hate that son of a you know what, which is very human. Guess where the hate comes? Back to us. So it is a worthy journey in corporate America to hold your integrity when your boss is a cheat, or you're selling pharmaceuticals and you know that they're no good.
Mm.
There's an integrity thing there. So when we're true to ourselves, we find our North Star. Even with the bully, you find ways to compensate. You put on your suit of armor. You clean off, even if you got to go to the bathroom a couple times a day and wash your hands and shake that idiot off. That's my judgment word. Um, so they're hurting. They're hurting you because they're hurt. And that's where compassion comes.
Yeah. Well,
It's courage.
I've got 3 wonderful strategies from you. One is that shake it off. I love that. The other is to really think about delete, just get this gone, and to put the armor on. I mean, I mean, to even say them, you go, huh? Is that effective? But I know it is because from my own experience, I know the things I've done almost intuitively. And now I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I know what I was doing at that moment.
Yeah.
These are effective. But I love, of course, that last piece, which is to always be ultimately with the intention of love too. That you're trying, I often use the word generative. Let us
Mhm.
let us create life. Well,
And
I can't believe how fast this is going. You promised me that we would fill the time, and we indeed have.
we have. So, in retrospect to everybody, it's been such an honor to be on this call. I invite you to take one little tidbit that may have resonated with you and work it. Work it till you become a master of it. We are all masters in training. And to everyone listening to this, be kind to yourself, love yourself. And if something happens and you can't be loving, put it there for yourself. That's what I would leave your listeners with.
Uh, Lynn, I just am so appreciative of this time and the stories that you tell. My goodness, what fun! Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Every now and then, there is something that changes how I think about the world. Grounds for Thought is a place where I talk about these moments so that you can explore the meaning for yourself. I was finding it very hard to read. Now, the first time, it was all about holding that page further and further away from my eyes. Then I learned I should also increase the amount of light because it helps the eyes have more options to get things in focus. Finally, my arms weren't long enough, and even sitting in bright sun on the page was not enough. I went to the eye doctor. No problem, it's perfectly natural, she said. I left with new glasses that allowed me to read again. Years went by, and I realized that once again, I was finding it very hard to read. I increased the light. Only this time, it made it worse. I held the page at different distances, but it made no difference. I thought maybe I had just was being lazy. I mean, after all, it's easier to watch a video than to read. I decided I was definitely getting lazy. So I spoke to myself about this laziness and tried again with renewed purpose. Still, reading was very hard to do. So finally, I went to the eye doctor. No problem, she said. This is perfectly normal. This time, I left her office with an appointment with a surgeon. You guessed it, I had to have cataract surgery. Now, 2 months later, well, it took time to put all the medical stuff together, I had my right eye done. Now, at first, I was stunned at how well I could see when I closed my left eye and used only the right one. Then I experimented and I closed my right eye and looked at the world through my left one. Wow, it was like looking at a world done in sepia. You know, like old photos that have that lovely yellow tint to them. Only then did it occur to me that I had been looking at a world with all of the colors biased toward yellow. The shift had occurred so slowly, I never noticed it. I could hardly wait for the surgery on the second eye. You see that with one eye done and the other not, When I looked at things, my poor brain flickered between sepia and full color. There were times when I could see both colors at the same time. Other times, the colors kind of floated next to one another, almost like lemon ripple ice cream. Now, when the surgery was complete, I anxiously looked at the world. First, it was so bright and colorful. Nothing was hidden. Colors were pure, very important, by the way, to someone who is an artist. The leaves and the trees fluttered independently of each other with such detail. But at night, that was the greatest revelation. You see, all the stars were still there, clear points of light, dancing as they had when I was little. It was like discovering the vision of the universe for the first time. I could see the stars again. Now, for me, this experience was profound. It got me thinking. After all the consulting and coaching I have done, I had to ponder what lessons translated from one setting to another, as both have to do with seeing what is real. Okay, first, did I always bring enough light on a problem at hand? I use the best processes and tools that are known to facilitate seeing the right issue clearly. And there are 2 books that contributed to this. I know, it's grounds for thought, and I always tell you about books in this. The first was Appreciative Management and Leadership by Srivastrava and Cooperwriter. Hard to get a hold of a copy today, but it really was monumental in shifting the way I saw the world. But more recently, Design Thinking and Social Construction by Cilian Camargo Borges and Sheila McNamee. A great book about how to see things and how the world puts things together. Then, was I aware of bias? Remember that sepia bias that I had that shaded everything? My intention is always to create spaces where those participating feel at ease, saying what they see, asking about what they don't see, without fear of retribution, because they have learned to trust each other. 2 fantastic books contributed to this. Ed Catmull's famous Creativity Inc. He talks about candor, having real candor in companies. And of course, Brené Brown's Daring Greatly, where she talks about the fact that vulnerability is actually a strength. Did I bring enough voices to the table that nothing is hidden? I always invite those impacted from every level and unit, even when the clients become nervous. They sometimes don't like to see different levels talking to one another. How are they going to understand the problems? Anyway, 2 books contributed to this. One, a rather unusual one. Arlene Nash Ferguson wrote a book called I Come to Get Me, an inside look at the Junkanoo Festival. Now, the Junkanoo Festival is the big annual festival in the Bahamas. It actually occurs around Christmas time. But what's magical about that book and about nothing being hidden is how she describes how the costumes and the floats are created. They're created in what they call the shack. And in the shack, you are always who you are, and you are accepted for who you are. It's a wonderful book, and it describes it very well. The other book is Peter Block's wonderful book, Community, the Structure of Belonging, and the fact that we all wish to belong. And Peter is a marvelous writer, and it's a wonderful book that talks about how communities can really help one another belong. Okay, going back to my lessons, did I give everyone involved enough time to focus on the fine points? Could they see all the leaves fluttering independently? Could they see all the issues and imagine the possibilities? Perhaps the hardest thing to overcome in this one is time. The issues that I deal with my clients are real, and resources are always limited. The best I can do is create moments for focus with sound information and tons of encouragement. And this time I have to tell you about 3 books that informed me on this. One is called Time to Think. It's a small book by Nancy Klein, where she really talks about how you can help each other think through things. Another one is called New Culture of Learning by Douglas Thomas and John Seeley Brown, all about the fact that we should be lifelong learners. And then one of my very favorite books, The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. She describes her own creative process, and you get done and you say, I can do this too. It's just a wonderful book because all of them help us to be more creative and more accepting of this aspect of looking for possibilities. What's the fine points of things? Lastly, is the leader always able to define the vision well enough that everyone involved can see the stars clearly? Frankly, only the leader can do that. And the one book I always advise is Guy Kawasaki's book, The Art of the Start. Okay, I was sad when I realized my eyes had succumbed to cataracts, nature's wages of time, but a treat to see that my thinking benefited from wisdom, one of nature's rewards of time. All I had to do was use the experience and a little reading as some grounds for thought. And by the way, if any of you would like the bibliography of books, the reference list I just mentioned, go to the blog section of my website where you will find a rough transcription of this segment with all of the books referenced. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you have enjoyed the conversation and learned something new. I would like to explore what it means with you to build your resilient leader, the one that is already inside you. If that excites you, go to my website, madelineblair.com, and schedule a conversation. And if you're watching on YouTube, by all means, click the like button. And better yet, subscribe. This is Madeline Blair, wishing you infinite possibilities as you build that resilient leader within you.